Welcome everyone to Sex of the Future panel. I'm Sage. I'm a lawyer at Rudnick. We're one of the sponsors of this event, and my sector focus is life sciences and technology. And our firm has been championing femtech for a while now, so really happy to be here today. And I am delighted to be joined by four lovely ladies. Anna Lee, co-founder and head of engineering of Lioness, a women-led sexual wellness company. Charlotte Schofield, Ventures Director of Access VC, Reckitt's venture capital arm. Farah Kabir, co-founder of HANX, creator of sexual wellness and intimate health products. And Anna Butterworth, founder of Ultraviolet Agency, the first and only femtech trend forecasting and marketing agency. So ladies, I'll hand over to you. If you could just tell us a little bit more about what you do and just give us a bit more background, that would be great. Thanks.
You want me to start?
Yes, please.
Hi, I'm Anna. I'm co-founder and head of engineering of Lioness. We're the first and only smart vibrator that gives you biofeedback orgasm data. And the whole idea is that we're trying to expand the research around female sexual function. And so we partner with researchers and doctors as much as possible. And I'm super happy to be here. Talking about the science of orgasm is always really fun.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Charlotte. I'm an investor at Access VC, which is the venture capital arm of Reckitt. If you're not familiar with Reckitt, you'll probably be familiar with some of our products. So we're a global consumer goods company, home to brands like Dettol, Durex, and Nurofen. I'm really proud to say that we are one of the first corporate venture arms to be B Corp certified. And given it's a women's health event, I'm also really proud to say that 40% of the companies we've invested in are female founded, and 25% are solo female founders.
Hi everyone, I'm Farah. I'm the co-founder of HANX, a sexual and intimate wellness brand truly designed with women in mind. We started with condoms and lubricants that were kind to the body and kind to the planet, and we've since developed our proposition to offer women's health all the way from your first period to your first time having sex, your first child, menopause and beyond. In my previous life, for my sins, I was actually in investment banking, so I was in Goldman Sachs, which is wildly different to now selling Johnnies, but we live and we learn. And we're a super excited team to be offering holistic women's health.
Hi everyone, my name's Anna Butterworth. I'm the founder of Ultraviolet, which was the very first marketing agency focused on femtech, and now we're the only trend forecasting agency focused on femtech. You will have seen Femtech Future 30 flyers around, so that's the latest report, the biggest trends that are going to be shaping the market in 2024. We also have our Femtech Futures 23 report out now as well. So what I do is I see what's coming down the line in the future in terms of all of the interesting innovations, all the interesting trends, and I help brands to prepare for the future consumer.
Thank you so much. Okay, so I'm going to jump straight in here, and we're going to kick off the discussion talking about the world's first and only smart vibrator. So, Anna, you gave an excellent description there. This gives biofeedback orgasm data through science. Now, I haven't heard that in a conversation before, so we're going to talk about that. First, can you tell us more about this product and how research is being carried out in this space, how it can help expand our general understanding of sexual health, and how it can help destigmatize female sexuality?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say to answer this question, I'm going to step back into why we even started the company 8 years ago. There was two things we made realizations about this world. Was one, sex toy industry has been historically extremely male dominated. It was really catered towards men going into sex toy shops being like, hey, I want to spice up the relationship, what should I buy? And it was always these pink and purple vibrators with glitter and butterflies on them, 1,000 different settings that most women would be like, why do I need any of this? And so one of the biggest things was realizing that before we started the company, I met a founder of a different sex toy company. The company doesn't exist anymore. And I was like, how do you know what you're building works for people with vulvas or women? And he was like, oh, there's this industry standard where you put the vibration on your nose, and that's what a clitoris feels like. And I remember just being like, this is my villain story. Like, this is, we cannot have these toys be invented in such an archaic way where there hasn't really been innovation in this space. And then the second realization is that, I'm preaching to the choir, so I'll keep it really short, is that we know that women's health research is so limited, and it's such a new space. But when we look at femtech, we often forget about sex tech or sexual pleasure as being a part of a human experience. So when we look at female sexual pleasure research, we're talking about papers from the 1980s that we still cite with a sample size of 12 women. And so what we did was basically build this vibrator that's measuring your involuntary pelvic floor contractions, so how your vaginal or anal muscles squeeze and relax. It's one of the best indicators for orgasms. So there's a really unique pattern that happens during the orgasm that you can see through an app. And so the really fun thing that we've seen is that this data changes from all different kinds of health external factors: stress, sleep, medication changes, and then as granular as things like a cup of coffee or a glass of wine, we've seen orgasms change. So the idea for us was to bring a tool for self-experimentation, to understand what's actually happening with your body and give yourselves the ability to kind of explore and understand what's happening. And with that, the really, really cool thing has been with research is that we now have the world's largest data set on female physiological sexual function. And so we've been partnering with researchers and doctors to actually expand the research, which is very, very small, to actually understand how do people experience pleasure, what does pleasure look like, and then seeing things like, we really believe in this idea of that orgasms are the canary in the coal mine for health implications. And so what's been really cool is like we've had even a case study of an athlete who's been a longtime Lioness user, and she saw her data completely flatline, and she was like, I don't know what's happening, my orgasms don't feel the same, the data doesn't look right. And then we were like, did something happen on this date? And she was like, oh yeah, she's like, I had a concussion. And so all of us took this moment to realize something was odd, and so she went back to her doctors and she decided to take a pause from her sport. And so as she did physical therapy, she actually saw her orgasm data come back to normal. And so we kind of see this like chicken and the egg of, one, how orgasms can determine things like external health factors. We already do it for people with penises, like cardiovascular disease when you see erectile dysfunction, but we don't have that information for women. So the idea for us is to continue expanding in the research and seeing how different walks of life, ages, and all of that can kind of have an effect on all through connected to your sexual pleasure.
Amazing, thank you. So it's interesting, you touched on a lot of points there about, you know, data and gathering data, and obviously with your company, it's purely gathering data based on women, 100% women, obviously. But you know, a few statistics here. So it wasn't until 1993 that the National Institutes of Health mandated that women and minorities must be included in clinical trials. And that really wasn't that long ago. We're in the 30th anniversary now. And then just, you know, going one step further, I think it was around 2015 where the first female Viagra was being tested on an initial study of 23 men and 2 women. So you tell me how does that work? So it's great to see that we now actually have an all-female study, and the importance of that just coming through that. So Charlotte, next question for you. You're an advocate of funding intersexual wellness, and you must see a lot of new and emerging ideas. So can you tell us what are the biggest opportunities that you see for women in sex tech now?
Yeah, of course. I think to give some context about how we invest. So we invest in companies that align to Reckitt's mission, which is to create access to better quality health, hygiene, and nutrition. And we see intimate wellness and sexual empowerment as a really core part of that mission. So we invest in actually multiple categories, but personally, and some of my colleagues are here and they know this, my favorite category is the sexual wellness category. And that's because of ideas like this that show that we are literally in the midst of a sexual wellness revolution. I think many people in this room can probably have this experience at one time in their life where they felt awkward or embarrassed about buying a sexual wellness product, and that just shouldn't be the case. You know, if you look at the beauty category, and if we're thinking about the future, I think it's a really good comparison, right? If you want to buy a lipstick or a face cream, you walk into a store, there are hundreds of brands and hundreds of options, and usually somebody there to help you pick out the right one for you. And that should be the same for the sexual wellness category. And it is starting to happen. So we invested in a brand last year called Maud. I can talk loads about Maud, but basically they're a very inclusive, beautiful sexual wellness brand. And they are one of the first brands to ever be in Sephora stores in the US. If you don't know Sephora, they are a massive beauty and personal care retailer in the US. There's actually one in London now, you should go. And I think these types of milestones are demonstrating that culturally, we see sexual wellness as a core part of our overall wellness and should be part of our self-care regimen. So yeah, at Access VC and at Reckitt, where we see the biggest opportunity is there is this cultural shift of attitudes that really understands that sexual wellness should be a priority. And this is enabling many more brands to come into the space and to create a lot more choice for consumers.
Thank you. So talking about innovation and consumers, so Farah, in 2021, you launched a same-day dispatch service for the hormonal contraceptive pill. And as I understand it, that was actually just initially to tackle the COVID-induced backlog for GP appointments. And so can you tell us, we're now living in a post-COVID world, sort of, we're going to go with that. Post-COVID world now, how has that enterprise continued? And so has that sort of just continued just throughout the course of just your general day-to-day activities within your company? And how do you see, what are your thoughts on the future of women's sexual health in light of that? Because obviously we had a trigger event and that sort of changed things, but if that hadn't happened, obviously we wouldn't be here now. So you tell us a little bit more about the product and what you've seen in that space.
Yeah, of course. So we actually started with condoms and lubricant, again, just to test into some of the ideas you guys are saying, and that it's a stale category, often male-dominated, garishly packaged, promoting a man's conquest. So we started with a couple of products, but we soon found there's a whole host of areas across women's health. And my co-founder's a gynecology doctor, so we're sort of seeing this firsthand, whether she was treating STIs or delivering babies. There was a real gap to serve women better, whether that's through education or products. So quite quickly after we launched condoms and lubricants, we actually looked into the wider women's health sector. What are the milestones of women's health? And where do we need to be better serving? And we were really saddened to see that actually most of women's health has not been served very well, especially like you say, there's not enough data or research on women. So it was always in our pipeline to offer choice and freedom to our customers. Not everyone is going to use condoms all the time, but they may choose to go on hormonal birth control or use the morning after pill. And ultimately, choice is the key thing here. But COVID did accelerate our plans. So obviously, when COVID happened, pharmacies shut, people couldn't get GP appointments, the NHS was already pretty stretched, and sexual health services were reduced. So it was a great opportunity for us to accelerate our plans and actually launch the same-day dispatch. And so from HANX, you can actually go and choose over 20 different types of birth control that you would regularly get from your GP or on repeat prescription, as well as the morning after pill with same-day dispatch. That's gone really well. Initially, it was to serve a purpose, but we also wanted to see where the demand was. And what's really exciting is the data pool we've acquired here. We were able to see customers who first started with us and only used condoms because they were dating, all the way to then trying for a child and pausing their subscription on condoms because they were going through pregnancy, and then coming back and deciding to choose the pill. And ultimately, it's all about the choice and the education that comes with that. And it's really helped us to build other products and services for our customers beyond that prescription element. What else is it that they need? And something that I mentioned earlier is, again, the milestones of women's health, connecting the dots. There are lots of amazing brands in different sectors, but how do we have one holistic view? And it's not been an easy road or a quick road to take. We've had to build trust and authority in the space and also make it more comfortable for people to carry and buy things like condoms. So coming back to your point, Charlotte, about Sephora, so again, we aligned with retailer brands that were in the lifestyle space. So we're also in Sephora in the UK, alongside Boots, Superdrug, etc.
Free advertising for Sephora right now. Anyone
we
look at Sephora?
But offering that choice and accessibility beyond where you would generally get these products. So yeah, it's been a great move for us, and it's helped build our audience and also bring different kinds of customers.
Thank you. So Anna Butterworth, so I'd like to ask you, you've been around and working in this space since before femtech was even coined. So can you just tell us about your journey and the growth you've seen in the space? And it would be great to hear from you and your expertise about where you see things going in the future. Like, what can we expect to see?
Sure, thank you so much, yes. I have seen a lot of change. I mean, from when I very, very first started in this industry in 2015, it was a completely different space. Femtech, we didn't have this word to kind of find each other and connect, for one thing. Everything was still very, very early stage. So some of the really big changes we've seen are huge exits. We've seen billion-dollar businesses. We've seen women's health just be more normalised, particularly sexual health be more normalised, and people are able to talk about these things. It's a very, very different world today than it was back then. I mean, I had no idea, even though I was in my late 20s, I had no idea that my cycle had 4 different stages. I thought it was just a period and then 3 weeks of nothing. So we've all moved on quite far as consumers, but also as brands. And one of the big things that we're seeing is so much more choice, right? It was very, very difficult to find things that worked for you, and we are all so different and we are all so unique, so being able to find a suite of products that serve us in lots of different ways has been really, really important, and it's been such a big part of the industry change. But also seeing big acquisitions and big mergers is really important, because it has traditionally been quite difficult, and we've been quite siloed in all of the innovations that are happening, where we have to do a lot of work as consumers to find brands that speak to us, to find ones that meet our environmental needs or emotional needs or close by or whatever it is. So knowing that we've got brands that we can come to and can provide lots of different parts of that all at once are really important. So the universalization of those sorts of things is really, really helpful. And where I see it going is a bit more of that, but also more choice, but also a kind of a look at sex as it's part of our health and it's part of our well-being, but sex and intimacy are both really, really important to our daily lives, and figuring out that there is this physical part, but there's this emotional part as well. And some of the things, I write trend reports, what we're seeing in our latest trend report are brands that are really coming to serve our intimate needs as well as our sexual needs. So we do have these fantastic women-owned brands that are created for women by women that can serve our physical needs, seeing more ways that we can get our intimate needs served as well. So whether that's finding new ways to find a real-life partner or a digital partner or somebody, or a combination of those things is going to be really interesting and really exciting. So whether you need an AI tool to talk to about your really obscure fetish, because you don't know anyone in your life that will talk to you about that, or whether it's having a physical product that can connect with your phone, so it knows exactly how you're feeling and when you have certain needs. All of those things are going to start being served, and we're going to start seeing a lot more personalization, a lot more choice.
Thank you. So I'm going to give a general question now to throw out to all of you. Obviously, it's clear from this discussion that technology is unlocking the female pleasure now more than ever. There's clearly still a lot of work to be done. But for a lot of people, men and women, it's uncomfortable to talk about these issues. I mean, it's uncomfortable to talk about sexual health issues, and even more uncomfortable when it's intimate, and talking to your family and friends is not something that naturally comes up in conversation. I mean, not even for me or for us. I think we're all pretty open people here or on this panel, but there is still a bit of a barrier there. So. And Anna, you sort of started to address this already, but I'd be interested to just hear from all of you. How can we address this discomfort and then move forward from that, and actually then get past it and actually work to how great this sector is and how we can really build from it?
I think there's going to be a couple of ways to do that, but social change is really important, and it's slow, and we can't expect it to change overnight. And I think the people in this room, we are leaders in this space. It's our job to normalize the conversations and to get the rest of the world's the laggards behind. As a trend forecaster, we have early adopters, and then right at the end you have laggards, right? So we're all the early adopters. It's our job. We have responsibility to the world to normalize sexual conversations, to normalize pleasure, to normalize intimacy, and the need for that. So you've all got work to do, by the way.
Just to add to Anna's point, I think it's a great opportunity to get creative. It's a perfect opportunity as a challenger or a startup brand to think outside the box and really get people talking about topics that are often taboo, or people feel a bit shy talking about. And a couple of examples we have at HANX. So on Valentine's Day, instead of using that as a perfect opportunity to highlight lingerie on a romantic date, we instead highlighted on vaginismus, which is a very common problem that women experience, with some billboard campaigns. And it was really great to highlight that. And we also had a website dedicated to where you can get more advice and information on that. Another example is we had a flower garden in Shoreditch at Box Park that said, "Fuck the planet." And it encouraged people to come forward and pluck these flowers that actually had a HANX in the middle and sort of educating them around sustainability and the inclusivity of our brand. So it's a great opportunity to get out there. And ultimately, Brits kind of get by with humour. And so using that creativity in those moments can really help build that trust and for people to talk more openly about these taboo topics.
I think what I love to see is there are a lot more brands coming out that are targeting very specific communities or problems. So, for example, we invested in a brand last year called Future Method, which is specifically designed for anal sex, and the founder is a doctor, Dr. Goldstein, and we love the products he's created for the proper preparation and aftercare. But what's been amazing is actually the educational content on his Instagram. You should all follow him, Dr. Goldstein. He's amazing. All of the content is really factual and scientific, but it's also really fun and engaging, and you want to share it with your friends. And I think it's helping a lot more people, not just the gay community, to explore anal sex. Another example is, and I've seen a couple of brands doing this in the US. One is called Playground, which has been launched by Christina Aguilera. And it's a suite of lubes, but they're specifically targeting younger women who might feel shame over buying a lubricant and trying to encourage them to buy it for themselves and not just for their partner. So I love that these brands are really picking up on where the barriers are to people experiencing better sexual pleasure and more intimacy. So yeah, just more brands and more female-founded brands.
I have to agree with Charlotte. I always say, like, there's 1,000,000,003 ways people experience pleasure, and we've only cracked maybe like 5 of them. And so we just need more people coming into this space and kind of from your perspective of how you experience pleasure, other people experience it, but it hasn't been addressed yet. So I always tell the story too of like, I grew up in Korea. I grew up in a really conservative religious family. I was terrified of my own body to my mid-20s. And so when we first started this company, I was very much like, I'm gonna just be a really good engineer. I don't wanna do any interviews. Like, I don't have to say the word clitoris in public or like orgasms. And then 8 years now, like, I'm putting my own orgasm data online for people to see and understand what we're talking about. And so I really believe in this idea of knowledge is pleasure. And so we just need that information and just giving yourself the chance to understand your own body and like getting in touch with it, but also have science help you back that. So for me, it's really seeing how we can change this by, one, inner self, but also getting more people in here and absolutely getting companies to change policies, how we see sex as a taboo thing, like Meta can't do Instagram ads still, Facebook ads, all of those things. Those policies need to change, and we just need more money and investment in this space.
Thank you so much. I have one follow-up question for you, actually. So you talk about your background and upbringing, and then it wasn't until your mid-20s that you sort of suddenly thought, okay, well, there's this whole new world out there. Obviously, now you do what you do. How did that, have you spoken to your family about it? How did you start that conversation? Because, I think that seems like there was such a huge barrier there to start with, more so than others, and you've sort of gone to the extreme, really. So can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I lied to my parents for 2 years after I quit my job. I was working as a mechanical engineer at Amazon. I quit my job, didn't tell them that I was working on this company. And then one day my mom came to visit, and I was like, okay, I just need to tell her. So she came into our startup desk. I had all these vibrators torn down, and I was like, so I'm doing this thing, and I was like, I really just believe in this idea that women deserve to understand their bodies better, and she was really quiet, and I was so sure she was gonna yell at me for 2 hours, and she was really quiet. She's like, I used to have a vibrator when I was younger, and I was like, oh. And then for 2 hours, we talked about our sex lives and just sharing our experiences, when the first time I had sex was, and she was just like, I'm just glad that you found something that was so scary to you and kind of understood it. So obviously my parents still want me to get a real job. They say a real job to this day, but it's one of those things I always see it like my parents and my grandparents know what I do, and if they have come this far, I really do believe that we can, as a society, just completely move forward, because my parents are scary.
Thank you. I love this panel. I know a few of you, and it's just super fun. But it's a question of educational. So I am postpartum, and I know you're doing lubes. Can you explain a little bit more? Because I think as a woman growing up, I also discovered being more open with my own sexuality and orgasms in my 20s. But I felt that using lubes meant that my body wasn't ready, so it was not okay. So can you explain a little bit more why lubes is important as a young woman and then throughout our lives, and especially for me, postpartum?
Hello. Yeah, lube is absolutely important. It shouldn't matter what age, where you're at in your sex journey or beyond. You shouldn't feel embarrassment or shame having lubricant. And one of the things that when we launched, we wanted a lubricant as natural to your body as possible, because we found that from feedback, actually, people were using things like strawberry flavored lube or, tingling sensation, but then we're getting UTIs, irritations, and thrush. And we're thinking it was them and not the product. So we wanted to create something that was truly gynecologically tested and backed and was kinder to the body. And with that, we've had a whole host of different audiences come to us. So, initially we've had teenagers and people sort of up to the 25 mark who were saying, but I didn't think I needed lube. It's well, it's not a need. It's all about your pleasure and what works for you. And there shouldn't be any shame or embarrassment around that. But what we found since then is there are menopausal women that use our lubricant because one of the side effects is dryness. And again, it's coming back to that education point, educating them on the use of lubricants and that there shouldn't be any shame or taboo around it. And also getting to know your body. So you said you're postpartum. Congratulations on the cute little one. But it's whatever feels right for you and empowers you to have that pleasure moment. So there should be no taboo around it, but I definitely advocate even more education. And you can look on our site, we've got a whole host of content on the benefits, when you should use it, how you should use it, etc.
I love your loops, so thank you.
Thank you.
So do we.
Hello, thank you. Really great panel. My name is Parveen. I'm from a company called Semble. I actually just wanted to go back to one of the points Farah made about the marketing campaign that you did. And I've recently come across this article about mindful marketing. And the example that was given was Bloom and Wild, they're a flower company. And on Mother's Day, for people who don't have mothers, they don't want to be reminded that they don't have a mother. So they won't send them an email. It's up to the user to opt out of that. And I just wondered, in your eyes, for all of you, what does mindful marketing look like in the sex tech space, where oftentimes, obviously, as you've said, things are quite taboo, but also you want to empower people to talk about this. So it seems like a tricky balance. I wonder if any of you have experience with mindful marketing.
Hello. I'm happy to sort of talk through I think certainly we have challenges, especially when it comes to things like email marketing. Being a taboo brand, you often go straight to junk mail, or if you put your corporate email address in, which happened to us at Goldman, if there's anything like the word condom, pleasure, orgasm, it would go through a profanity filter and then go straight to your boss, and you would have to explain why you've received an email like this. So we have challenges like that. But I think it's about understanding your audience. So we obviously have an opt-in. We don't automatically assume that they want to receive information, but we tend to educate them once they've purchased the product. And even if they haven't purchased the product, we tend to have campaigns that educate, like the Vaginismus campaign, and then they have an option to opt in. It's interesting you say about Bloom and Wild. I think they do some great campaigns, and they're sensitive moments, and I think as brands we should all try and incorporate that. I think as a small brand for HANX, it's quite difficult to segregate right now as it stands, but we tend to do quarterly surveys with all our consumers where we ask them, what do they think of the HANX? What do they want next from us? Why have they stopped purchasing, for example, to really try and understand and get to the bottom of what they want. So that's one way that we try and be a bit more mindful.
I have something to add for that too. We have a hard time running ads just in general, but one of the really interesting points was we were trying to do bus ads in San Francisco, and the ad agency was like, we've never had a sex toy company do this, and they're like, you can only show 1/3 of the vibrator, and we're like, which 1/3? And they're like, I don't know, let me get back to you. And so there was this panic around like how we even have a normal conversation around sex. So it's a bit of a thing of what they were like, how about you guys just put like a woman in bed, like, you know, with her like hips up and then grabbing the bed sheets, and we're like, how is that better than showing a vibrator? And then we want to show orgasm data, and they're like, you can't put the word orgasm on there. So I think there's a lot of also just like I'm a big advocate in policies having to change, I think, for marketing. And then we wanted to actually put people with vaginas or people with vulvas, and they're like, we can't use that word, just use women. And so it was this whole thing of like, well, as much as we try to be as mindful as possible, sometimes we're stuck in like building a business and then doing marketing, but then also wanting to be mindful of our audience. And so it's a little bit of a thing. I always push it back onto like policies need to change.
Yeah. Sorry, I was just going to agree with that. We've had so many challenges with meta policies and getting adverts across that make it incredibly difficult for us to change that path and accommodate for women's health. But the one thing I will say is call people out on their bullshit. 2023 is all about actually, whether that's on LinkedIn and actually saying how it is, because we've seen men's health, you know, Viagra companies, etc., be on, you know, New York billboards, but the minute it's a women's health company, oh, it's too taboo. So I would push that back and say there's definitely, like, there's a bit of a zeitgeist at the moment, and a lot of people are coming forward and speaking about it. There's I always get this wrong, Centre of Intimacy Justice, who do exactly that, and they feed all the information to Meta to help change the policy. So shout about it and let it be known, and hopefully your audience and your consumers can help fight that cause.
Hello. I feel like we talk a lot, obviously there's a lot of women in this room right now, there are some men. Hi, I'm sitting next to one. But do you ever, I mean, I sometimes get the sense that we talk so much around women's intimacy and you know, there's more and more talk about it, but does it ever feel like it's, the onus is being put too much on the woman and I know it's obviously it's our own you know, our own orgasm. We should be able to, you know, take control of that. But if your partner or whoever it is doesn't understand, you know, you or you know how a woman's orgasm works, you know, is there, you know, it can almost feel quite like lonely, and you're like, oh, I'll just do it myself then, which I'm sure, I mean, I know a lot of people do that. I mean, but yeah, I mean, if you are in a relationship or you know you would rather do it with a partner, like, is there kind of that barrier of like it's become like your own problem and like, you know, it's becoming too, I don't know, you can't really overly empower someone, but I don't know, becoming too individualized.
So I have a lot to say on this subject because as a femtech marketer, I've seen a lot of brands, I've seen the industry change a lot, and essentially what we're still doing is asking women to advocate for themselves, and we still are asking women to find, you know, you still have to find the brand to find the test that you're going to take to tell you the information to do. And then you have to decide what you're going to do with that information. You also have to, we're asking for so much advocacy. You then have to go to your doctor and advocate for yourself there. And yes, we're telling people, you know, discover your pleasure, discover your intimacy, and then advocate in the bedroom, advocate with your partner. It is a lot to put on the women. And yeah, I totally agree. The only thing is, until we've done this work, it's not going to come back to us. And I do believe it will come back to us tenfold. You know, we are seeing a parallel change happening with the conversations around toxic masculinity and men talking more about intimacy and being more sensitive and understanding themselves better, and men's mental health. And we are seeing these parallel social shifts. So they have to work together. And obviously women don't only have sex with men, but it really helps if the men in the world are also aware and are also understanding themselves and their own approach to sex and the way that they come to it and the kind of preconceptions that they're going to have. So that work also has to be done, and they have to do that for themselves. But we also have to do this work for ourselves as well, and hopefully what it means is we can come to an intimate position. We only have to say things once. We can say it clearly. We understand what the needs are. We can say it clearly, and they can be receptive and take that on. And that's really the dream that we can only hope to get to that point, because only we know what we want. So